Ready.
Awesome. All right, so part 2, action items. What time do we want to be out of here? Before traffic? 4:10. Okay. Now, moving on. Well, it's good that we're doing this week and not next week when school starts. Right? And then the week after that, UCF starts.
Already.
All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about are some tips and actual action items. Corey, why do you look like that?
I'm short. So, the most common, you mentioned earlier, the most common complaints that we hear is typically wait times, or it's something to do with the front desk. Actually,
We got one today, an hour ago, 2 hours ago.
Before we left, one of the practices that we work with, they got a review. Someone left them a 1-star. Was it on Yelp?
Yelp.
Yes, it was Yelp. They're not in this room.
1-star
so it's okay.
on Yelp. They said that they called the office. The front desk people were incredibly rude. They didn't even bother to schedule an appointment, and they left a 1-star review, which brought his average down. Do you know what it was, Daniel? Now?
It's like 2.5, maybe a 3 on Yelp.
And this doctor is one of those docs who's like, this is going to be a personal upfront.
Yeah.
When he finds out.
He used to say, don't bring negative reviews.
He doesn't even want to see negatives because it hurts him so much. He doesn't want to deal with it. But yeah, 1-star. Or an acting front desk.
Right, and this person never even scheduled an appointment. So they're not even really a patient, but they're having this giant impact on the practice overall score. So one of the things that we say is that a lot of people try to, they fall into that herd mentality where 95% of people just follow the informed 5%. So they're just going to kind of go with the flow. Whatever everyone else is saying is, well, that must be true.
Yeah, or you know how it is. Like you're on social media and somebody's saying something negative and you don't really know what they're, like really understand what they're talking about. So you're like, yeah, screw them. I like that too. Really?
So, in terms of customer experience, we put a couple of logos up here, there, where people, when you think of great experience, top 5% of companies, we listed out a few here. Specifically, I wanted to touch on Spotify. Has anybody used Spotify? Music service?
I was like, does anybody know what Spotify is?
Yeah. So Spotify is like a streaming music service. They're really well known for their customer service because when they started, they had the aspirational goal that they were going to provide this exceptional service for whatever anybody needed. And if they couldn't find it on Spotify, they were going to show them where they could get it. And they set up a community where you see this a lot of times with big companies. They'll set up like a message board. And they'll have people in the community actually answer those questions, and then if they can't, Spotify will step in and say, well, here's where you can actually find it. And they've done it so well that they've been awarded like top 5%, I want to say for the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and there was actually at the social media conference where we were at, I don't remember if we were in there, Danielle, but they were talking about like, there was a complaint that just wouldn't go away. So the customer service rep at Spotify actually answered or responded to the complaint by putting together a custom playlist for the user and then put the playlist online as the response. Because sometimes you don't have to respond with a lengthy explanation. You can respond with a meme. You can put a picture up there. You can respond with a video. How do I get to your office? Put a video in here that shows you if you're coming from this direction, go here. Here's where you park in this parking garage. Things like that. Apple, I think, is another example of companies that use kind of forums or other websites. They let their like raging fans be the ones that are answering the customer service questions. If anybody in here has like a Mac, there's like Mac forums out there. And if I'm looking for something like how do I do this? Why won't my computer, why do I get the little spinning wheel of death? You just do it and then, do it and then there's like 30 people that have posted in the Mac forums answering my questions. I've never had to get on the phone with Apple because it's out there because their fans have done it.
But if you did, you could go to the Genius Bar and they'll take care of it there in an Apple store. So that's something else that they have that not a lot of other companies have. So the best companies, it's kind of, it's ingrained in who they are because it's an aspirational goal. It's not some like marketing construct where they just said, yeah, we're going to focus on customer service. It's in their DNA.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, proactive communication. We like to say, don't be this guy down here. He's a 1-star doctor. He bumped his head and got a 3-star once. But, yeah.
He was wondering if you would laugh at that.
I thought that was so perfect.
I didn't really get it, but that's okay.
So the face of public relations has changed over the years, specifically in the past 4, I would say. It's social now. So you have the opportunity to craft the message that you want, and you can encourage engagement. You can share with patients like you never could before.
So like back in the day, you get a new doctor, and you're like, what are we going to do? Well, when you get a new doctor, you'd have to write the press release, send the press release to the Orlando Business Journal and to the medical publications.
Maybe they run
call John Kelly and be like, hey John, can you run an article about my new doctor? John would say, you didn't read your advertising contract. I know it's separate. You would get into this whole conversation. You'd hire a PR agency because they had relationships with the media. You would go out there and maybe you'd get a blurb. Now you just put it on your website, put it on social media, put a few dollars behind it, and boom, you've managed the message yourself.
We see this a lot of times too with if there's a road closure. So we can put it on the website, we'll put it on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, social channels to make sure that patients know that it's going to happen, or if hours are changing a particular day. It's controlling the message is easier from a practice side than it ever has been.
Well, and just like in June of last year, during the Pulse shootings, I'm sure you guys were the same way. I mean, we were shut down. Our offices are within Orlando Orthopedic Center's offices. And immediately we had, one side we're dealing with a tragedy, and the other side is how do you tell patients what's going on and how they're going to get to our offices or not get to our offices, and at what point will we reopen the office? How do you communicate with staff? There were just too many things going on at once to be able to get the right message out and to make sure it's the same message across the board. So we were able to utilize social media to do that. Corey and I host a podcast. We put it out really every other week, and it's for medical office managers for the most part, and it's nationwide. We get all kinds of downloads on it. We've been doing it, I think, episode 137 or 138 is where we are now, but one of those episodes is talking about crisis communication, in particular how we, from a local standpoint with our practices, manage some things like the Pulse shooting. There's a lot to be learned. There's a lot to be learned from Orlando Health, and I've seen that when Orlando Health is on a lot of speaking circuits right now, talking about crisis communication related to how they manage that crisis. Outside of the tragedy itself, just how we all managed it.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your...
Yeah, I can talk about that just real briefly. So in my other world, I wear 2 hats, and I'm in my 7th year of an 8-year cycle as an Orange County Commissioner. So I'm elected by the people really on the east and the southeast side of town, everywhere from Waterford Lakes to Lake Nona and all the way out past the airport and whatnot. So I came into this role at the dawn of social media. I was probably the first one starting to use social media in that public role. And I will say probably 70% of my constituent relations, my daily interactions, are on social media. If there is a complaint, people, or even a question about something, I had another example of it this past week. The light on one of the roads wasn't working properly. Well, back in the day, people would call, it would get lost in the cycle, they don't know what would happen. So all people do now is they tag me. They would tag your business, just like they would tag me personally. Pops up on my phone. I see that there's something that I need to address. I get the information, I send it off to my folks to deal with it. It's a totally different thing. When there's a negative that I'm dealing with, like from a big PR type standpoint, it's an issue because you'll never make everybody happy. Sometimes I have to say, everybody, I'm coming in. I'm going to deal with this negative head on because I know what my voice is and what I've told my constituents I'm going to do. And I realize we'll never agree on everything, but I know that if I educate those folks, that people will come to my, they'll save me on this one, because I'll say the story over and over, but sometimes you have to be willing to dive into social media and have those interactions and not put your head in the sand. And so this last 7 years has been a tremendous learning experience, and I'm just blessed that I came on at the very beginning, because I see more and more that people only want to communicate on social media. And because I have things in place to monitor it, when people are complaining and not tagging me, I still see it. And then I will go right up in there and give out the correct information. Because that's really what it is. People want it to be, they want to feel heard, they want facts, and then you'll get fans that will then relay the facts on to the next person.
Speaking of engaging on social media, does anybody remember, it was a couple months ago now, but this example, when Wendy's kind of went crazy popular on Twitter?
Yes.
So what happened was they hired a new person to manage their Twitter and their social, and they immediately became really sassy. So
Like her name is like the sassy, like Miss Sassy, that's
Yeah.
her role in the organization.
So somebody asked where they can get a Big Mac, and then Wendy's, or how much does it cost, and Wendy's responds, it's going to cost you your dignity.
This is worth following, this is good stuff to follow.
Yeah, it's really good. But the reason that we put these up here is one, because they're fun, and two, Wendy's was always trying to compete with McDonald's and Burger King, but they don't have the means to do so. So it's kind of like a small independent practice to docs trying to compete with the big hospital system. You don't have the means. So what Wendy's did, they went a different route, and they sort of changed the conversation. They went something with a little bit more aspirational, and they created this voice that echoed throughout everything that they did. It started on social media, but because of this, they got a bunch of PR coverage. Their website traffic went up, people buying more hamburgers. So they changed.
I have my favorites. Can you find the nearest McDonald's? And she put the trash can on the
Yeah.
It's funny. It's just funny. It's humorous.
So they took their message into their own hands. They infused it with some personality, and the results kind of speak for themselves. So the sassy route probably, I mean, maybe it is, probably not the best for you guys. Although, that said, I'd really like to see somebody try it and see how it works.
I love it.
But yeah, so one way to differentiate your practice or your service is to change the conversation. You have the opportunity to craft these messages, and it's okay to have a voice, especially on social media.
And the thing is, if you go to the next slide, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The thing is, whether you're going to participate in this or not, these conversations are taking place. Just like I shared with you in my public role, whether I want to dive in and actually explain why we haven't gotten a sidewalk repaired or not, they're going to all talk about why that sidewalk's not working, and they're going to form their own opinion on it, and they're going to get their own information out. So you might as well get in there and help control the message, versus letting somebody else control. So if there's anything to take, from a customer service standpoint, your patients are already complaining or offering praise, so you might as well know what they're saying and use it as a tool to teach, to improve, to make adjustments in your internal process. Every interaction online is an opportunity to improve customer service. Every single thing.
Or to post a trash can.
I loved it. So I was just asking the folks from Orlando Foot and Ankle, what social channels are you on?
We are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, and YouTube.
All right. And we were just saying, are you on Snapchat? Because I'm going to assume, because I know these guys and they're active, that nobody else's practice is on Snapchat yet. All right. We're not ready to be on Snapchat, so we don't go down there. But this is probably the number one question that we get is, all right, we're ready to go all in on this whole social thing and social customer service. What channels should we be on? And what's our answer to them?
You should whole-ass one channel and not half-ass a bunch of them.
Got that? Isn't that a good way to say it? All right, and we talked about it before. What's the number one channel?
Facebook.
There you go. And you know who the
No
number
price.
one growing audience on Facebook is? Grandma. So if you want to reach the right audience, it's mainly going to be female. Well, not mainly, but it's a higher proportion of female. But the number one growing segment is grandma.
And I'll add to that and say that, so if we run a digital ad campaign for a client, and we're allowed, in the analytics, we'll look at the results, and roughly where it's delivered, it's like 70% in that female household decision maker range. So it's like 35 to 65.
And another, kind of a side, not so much customer service related, but part of the reason we like Pinterest, which maybe you like Pinterest the same way, is because certain social channels really elevate your search engine rankings. Pinterest still gives you free traffic. And Danielle does all of our social media, and we have one infographic about training for a half marathon that gets shared and viewed everywhere, and it's probably one of the #1 drivers for traffic because Pinterest is still the wild, wild west. And if you can really adopt a strategy that is very focused on graphics and that Pinterest audience, which is like probably 90% female, then you can see dividends pay. And with Facebook, when you're engaged, you're not just posting, it's lifting all of your with Google. And when you do well on Facebook or Google, everything comes up, which helps you push down those messages.
Yeah, and then going back to being available when your patients are looking for you. If you're on Facebook, Pinterest, you have organic search, you're doing ads, all of those things, they help you show up on the front page of a search result. The more results you have, the less space there is for competition. So, real quick, proactive communication. One thing that we briefly touched on before was during a crisis management situation, you're able to use these tools to send messages, bypass traditional means. So if there's, like we did talk about before, if there's storms, road closures, etc., or you just have a small piece of news to share, it's great to put it on the website. And we were talking about this all the way over here. We used to have a hub, and we would say, let's put everything on the website, and then we'll drive everybody to the website. But that's changed recently, and what we started to do is realize that we have to have everything on every channel, as unfortunate as that is. But we want to be available and where the patients are, so it's got to go on the website, it's got to go on Facebook, it's got to go on Twitter, etc., etc., etc.
Well, and it's just, sometimes we'll do a video, like we used a video, I did a live video yesterday with Dr. Riggenbach. We didn't plan to do it, but he said, Corey, come inside the operating room because there was something bigger going on. Corey recorded a live video. As of today, it has over 10,000 views, all kinds of comments and shares, people tagging their friends to make appointments. And if we weren't doing that kind of thing and engaging with patients, then those patients never would have heard of this doctor and that procedure he was doing. He was doing it, streaming it in at the work conference, and so they had all the releases and everything was already teed up. It was just a matter of Corey having to walk in the operating room versus being on the outside. So it was an impromptu type of thing, but it's done so well, and because we were able to pivot when we needed to and be on the fly, and then we're able to respond to patients or to inquiries through social media, it's boosting up and it's performing really well. So, Southwest Airlines, I think, has a great example that they used a couple of years ago. They had a system outage, and it was literally the computer system went out, and every Southwest flight in the entire country was canceled or delayed. And you can imagine the PR nightmare and the customer service nightmare. I mean, you could imagine, because we would have been participating in that conversation. I'm not. So, the first thing they did is they have a crisis team in place already in case something happens, and they activated the crisis team, and they immediately got their CEO on Facebook and held a press conference on their own to communicate with people what was going on. Then the Twitter feed started blowing up of people just like tagging Southwest. I'm stuck at the airport, I missed my connection, I missed my child's graduation, my grandma died, you name it. Like, people were pissed. And they immediately had a plan in place to respond over and over. So, they had a press conference, they have their CEO, they have a team in place to respond on Twitter. They already knew what the message was going to be because they pulled it together. Southwest is just one big, hairy example because we all can, that can resonate with all of us. But there's no reason we can't do this at a practice level as well. And basically what they said is, you got to hug your haters. Even if people aren't going to be happy, you know what the message is, so you need to respond. You treat everybody the same across the board. And then from a customer service channel perspective, they said, look, every interaction with the customer potentially, whether it's at the gate or the desk or in the airport or online, every single thing needs to be responded to And every one of them is an opportunity to have an interaction with your customer. Every one of them.
Yep. And so the example there is when they did that on Twitter, someone complained, they immediately responded with a sincere sorry message and fixed it.
So you see it, so we're so sorry to hear about your cancellation. And then the lady, she's okay with it because she's been communicated to. She puts up this great image, which Corey picked because it's from Orange is the New Black.
Big thing. Yeah, and again, just to reiterate, every channel is a customer service channel. So if you're on one of these networks, I'd like to say if you live in this community, then it makes sense to be a part of it. So Facebook is a community. If you're on it, it makes sense to actually engage with the people there and not just schedule messages and then turn your back because you don't have time. Because if you're doing that, then you shouldn't be there.
This might be a tricky one.
80.
I think that was close.
I think that's close enough. Who said it? All right. So we got a book for you. It's Jay Bear's book, Hug Your Haters. He is he has a great podcast. He does a lot of great stuff. He's the CEO of a company called Convince and Convert. But he speaks at all the big conferences about this, and he's really coined the phrase social customer service. And he has a fantastic podcast, if you're a podcast listener, that talks about customer service and social all the time, and it's funded through Salesforce, and it's top notch if you get a chance. So we got the book, Hug Your Haters. You can pass that back, please. All right, so if you're going to aspire to be great as a practice, the first thing, and really the first thing, and almost the only thing you need to do, is you need to develop your employees to be rock stars. All right? Everybody has to be empowered to some degree. And the sooner you engage your employees and tell them why you're doing this or why it matters to you, the sooner you tell them what your aspiration is, the better.
Yeah, I would say that when employees are more engaged, patients are more engaged. So if there's trouble at home, like in a family.
Yeah, you're at the table, at the dinner table.
Yeah, there's tension.
And there's tension.
Everyone can feel it. It's palpable, right? And it's the same way at work. If there's tension, then patients can feel that too. So it makes sense to have this sort of aspirational mindset that has to start with the people at the ground level.
And you can't just say it and not do it. You have to put some things into action. So I mean, we're seeing more and more where our role has always been kind of this integrated marketing approach from an online perspective. We're seeing more and more with our clients that we're being brought into the equation to do training with employees or to start an employee engagement program and to work closely with our clients to say, all right, well, we're going to help you engage your employees and have a consistent message, and then we're going to work with your customer service team to pull it all together so we're all on the same message. We're seeing that more and more. So we're being asked more and more to build intranets. Do you have an intranet at your practice so that you can quickly disseminate information? It's not your website, it's your intranet. I'm sure you have them in Orlando Health. I mean, you got things that are going on from a communication standpoint. The fastest way that you can do it, mass to your employees, is an intranet. We have a client, a couple of them now, that are doing a printed employee newsletter. I don't know if any of you are on the committee for the employee newsletter, but we put a committee together for the employee newsletter where we get other people kind of involved in it, and we use that as an opportunity to share what's going on so that, we hear it all the time, there's so many offices across the practice, and I didn't know so-and-so moved to a different office, or I've never actually met somebody. So now we put new hires and people that have changed jobs in the employee newsletter. It takes time every month, but it has changed the dynamic of the conversation from employee to employee. So, your marketing isn't just external, your marketing is internal too. And so it's those types of things that, from a small practice perspective, there's little things that you can do to really change the mindset of the employee. And when you change the mindset of the employee and they know where we're headed, then it doesn't matter kind of how they address this patient or this patient. Everybody's on a message going after the same goal.
Yeah, and one thing that you can do too is grab somebody that's at the practice that you trust and ask them what it's like to work for the practice and what other people are saying it's like to work for the practice. Because so many times, you know, that you do like an annual review or quarterly review, and then that's kind of it. But it's okay to check in every now and then and just see what, you know, what the pulse of the employees is.
Sometimes you just need to talk to people.
Yeah.
You know, I gave away 1,400 backpacks this past weekend across 2 different events. And I'm talking to some kids that were helping me distribute the backpacks. These are Head Start kids, you know, high school age, getting ready. They've got these great aspirations, but they're going to move on. And we're talking about it, and I said, you know, tell me about these backpacks. You guys are here, they're volunteering their time. What do you think about them? They said, Jen, we love that you're doing this. It's amazing. We love that you're partners, you know, because it's the businesses that donate the backpacks and the dollars to buy them. They said, but we don't want backpacks. We're thankful for them, but what we really need are school supplies. Because the backpack's the biggest purchase we get to make when we go back to school. And mom will buy me a backpack, and I want one that's got the right padding, that's got the right pockets, that looks cool, but I don't have anything to put in that backpack. And all these places are handing out backpacks and not focusing on the school supplies. You don't know this until you talk to people. It's the same thing with your employees.
Absolutely. Yeah, so many times we kind of get caught up in the day-to-day and forget that we work with people in an industry that's meant to help people.
That's right.
And last thing on the slide, employees aren't just metrics, they're individuals. And I feel like sometimes that can kind of be forgotten about because everyone is supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and then they're put in a box that way. But you know, if you actually talk to them, then you make a world of difference.
So part of like aspiring to be great and creating rock star employees is that sometimes you have to tell employees what's going on, and then you need to reward them. You know, and sometimes an award is not dollars, and it's not, you know, luncheons, or it's not tchotchkes. Sometimes it's just saying, job well done. And so when we get online reviews, because we track online reviews, positive, negative, whatever someone's saying, if it's negative, we work with the person in the practice so that we can come up with a response and do some research and deal with the negative, because there's negatives that are legitimate. But if it's positive, and sometimes you forget about this, we share it with the teams. Because they don't hear it. They're not, you know, they don't even have access to emails sometimes. So if it's a positive experience because of something they did, and not the doctors. The doctors, God love them, but they get the accolades all the time. But the employees don't get the accolades. And so you have to share those positive experiences.
Absolutely. And also, was it an interview that we did, or did we hear it on a podcast? I don't remember now since there's been so many episodes. The woman that was saying, celebrating the birthday with an employee, was that our practice?
Yes, and so it was the CEO of a big dental practice, and she said, you know, one of the simplest things you can do from a recognition standpoint is just celebrate an employee's birthday. Not with a cake once a month, which sometimes it gets too big and you can only get one cake, but assigning the right people within the practice that will go and decorate a cubicle, or get a card and distribute it, and you know, 5 people sign the card. Just something to recognize people for a job well done, and it's completely outside of, you know, the day-to-day task of the practice, but something that says, hey, I recognize you and I accept you, and you're more than what you do on a 9-to-5 basis.
Yeah, she was telling us a story that she actually had an employee break down to tears because she said it was the only birthday cake that she got. Like her family forgot about it. Yeah.
But think about it. These people are your family. They spend more time with you probably than at home.
Yeah. So next bullet, we want to talk a little bit about culture by design. And essentially that's just sort of working intentionally to create the right environment. Culture isn't something that just happens unless you let it just sort of happen. You know, you can, from a leadership standpoint, outline guidelines and a framework, but if that's all you do, then that's not enough.
It goes back to like the aspirational goals. You have to set a big, hairy goal that maybe you won't achieve. You have to go after those 10-star reviews because you know you may only get 4 or 5, but 4 or 5 is a great reputation. You have to decide, we're going to have a dynamic workplace and we're going to do it from the ground up. And culture by design is not something you can say, 2018, we're going to implement a culture by design program and we're going to make the world of difference in our practice. No, it's something that takes years and years to develop, but you have to be intentional in it. The doctors have to be on board as well as the person picking up trash and changing the liner in the trash can. Everybody has to be on board with the culture that the practice is supposed to have.
You have to define excellence and then work toward it, in other words. And you already have a baseline, you know, it's whatever you're doing or not doing. right now. So that's your starting point, and then define where you want to be, and then you can take steps to get there. So we touched on this last slide, but sharing. So again, we're going to share what's going on in the practice because some people may not know. That's employee newsletter, committees, trainings, team bonding events. So many times when new employees, new hires are brought on, there is that initial training. Maybe there's a page that has a couple of bullet points with some goals and values.
Here's our mission statement.
Yeah, go home and read that on your own time. And then that's it. So it's important to try and schedule something to reinforce these things and really build that framework for success.
Because you can't say to an employee, you matter, but then not show them that they matter. You know, and there's oftentimes a disconnect because we get tied up in our day-to-day lives. But if you show them that you matter and everybody understands what we're working towards, then when you're dealing with customer complaints or positives, everybody's on message. Whether it's dealing with customer service from the person picking up the phone and interacting with the customer, or dealing with customer service from the fact that somebody went on Twitter and they're on a rant, everybody's on message.
Yeah, and to that point, it's important to clarify these structures and these roles with employees because some days maybe it's someone at the front desk, some days maybe it's somebody else, but if there's not clearly defined roles and scenarios where people know what they're supposed to be doing, then that's how things fall into practice.
Yeah, and like, for example, like in our employee newsletter that we do, if you notice it, we're tracking what people are saying online. We're sharing with the staff. We are a B- this month, and this month we're a B+. Because we want everyone to understand that collectively we're working to improve and that we may not be perfect, but we want you to know that what you do on a day-to-day basis is impacting the overall score, and because we're all so darn competitive, that we all want that score to be the best it could be. But if you don't share with your employees how you're doing from a customer service standpoint, they're never going to know. All right, so this is one that we get all the time. If you're putting together a customer service team, if you're really focusing on it, who needs to be on your team? Because if you're a small practice, it's going to be difficult. We already know that the people answering the phones that are dealing with customer complaints are absolutely overwhelmed. The big companies, you'll hear it from them. They have their customer service team and everybody understands the message and they're able to get on any channels that are going on. So, I remember hearing about, one example of like Avis Rent-A-Car. Well, they deal with like 9,000 inquiries a day in the US, like customer service inquiries. They have an entire call center. And their call center people may spend, they may have an email come in they have to deal with, they may have a chat bot that they've got to get on, they may have to go to social media and deal with whatever the complaint is, and then you may have an option where somebody's calling in. In a medical practice, you don't necessarily have that. So sometimes you have to put a team in place that you've got your customer service people, and if you can have somebody that's going to help from a social standpoint in the online monitoring, sit with those people to really hear it, it's going to help with your message across the board. When we used to sit with customer service people answering the phone, we would learn so much about the practice. So you think about that, maybe with a small medical practice, it's a hodgepodge. You've got somebody that deals with customer issues, challenges, not necessarily complaints, but deals with customer issues. Somebody that manages your social media. And you have to have a key person in probably the main office that can research problems and come up with solutions and then come together on how you're going to solve them. I was listening to a podcast this morning, the head of social media for the ACLU, and it was interesting because she said, for them, they deal with a lot of legal things. They want to make sure the facts get out there right because there's so much communication back and forth and back and forth. She said, well, I have a team of attorneys that work for the ACLU on pro bono. So if I have a question about can I post this or not, she picks up the phone and calls and says, hey, am I good? And they say, yeah, you're good, and no, let's tweak it. These are the same types of things that I think we would do in a medical practice. But one thing that Jay Baer, the writer of that book, says is, the key is when you're setting up your structure for your team, you want to have the right people in the office, the ones that are going to help you do the research and formulate a response to an issue as it may escalate. You want people that don't create obstacles. You want folks that are going to help empower you to make decisions and to get the message out there versus people that are going to serve as roadblocks. And we see it both ways. Sometimes we'll send a negative to a practice administrator and you guys are overworked and you don't have time to go research it And then ultimately you find out, you know, it had nothing to do with us. They weren't even talking about this practice. Do you put the review, you know, the response online, or do you take it offline? But you need people within the practice that can help you navigate that.
Yeah, it's important.
And it's not marketing.
Yeah, important to remember these things, they shouldn't be, you know, like siloed off, and there should always be a communication between, you know, whoever is managing social media, and then if there's a customer service person in place, or HR, whatever the case may be, we want to make sure that they're communicating so they're all aware of the response that's being posted. And that's a culture thing, it's a personality thing, it's something that you can set up at the very beginning, and it'll save a lot of headache down the road.
We're almost there too.
Alright, so culture by design, these are a couple of integrated communications strategies. So essentially what we wanted to do with this slide is just say that these are some things that you should be thinking about if you're going to try and put together a training for your employees. You want to do something on social media for business, because a lot of people, they don't realize the things that they say and do affect the overall practice, not only from a social standpoint, but under this umbrella.
They don't realize even, I mean, these trainings are not crazy trainings, but sometimes people don't even realize that they put the name of their practice as their employer, and then they get home and they're talking some smack. They haven't read your social media policy, and all of a sudden they're in an argument with an elected official, right? I use that as an example. And it's tied back to their business. Or, God forbid, like small business owners and, you know, people that are really active in the community going on a rant, because it all ties back. So just the most basic of training. What you do at the front desk affects the practice in this way.
And it's important too, that last bullet there, so how to handle negative patients. I think that one's really important for everybody, even if maybe they don't deal with patients every day, because at some point maybe they do. And you want everybody on the same page, you want everyone to know what the policy is, what the procedures are, and then how to escalate that issue if you need to a manager, or who's empowered to make those decisions and affect the day-to-day operations of the practice.
So these are just some ideas that we put together, and the idea being you're going to set this aspirational goal that you're going to deliver this unbelievable customer service, and the marketing team puts it together and goes out and runs after, like, you know, we're going to put together this and we're going to make it happen. Well, if you don't engage the employees and teach them how they're impacting the bottom line, it won't work. And you can't say we're going to have a culture that is going to, you know, change everybody's day when they walk into our practice. And when you say everybody, you don't just mean your patients. So you're going to make them happy, you're going to make your employees happy too. So it's that whole thing. You can't tell them you're the reason we're so successful, and then turn around and not include them in anything.
Gonna go through these kind of.
Yeah, why don't you go through them kind of quick, because I want everybody to be out of here.
Okay, so.
Because you'll get them as a CFMGMA member, you're going to get these in the slides.
Yeah. So essentially, we just wanted to list out some of the things some of the tools we use, and some of the tools that are available from a marketing communication standpoint, of the MarCom, right?
Yep.
Yeah, nailed it. So Facebook Business Manager, if you have a Facebook page, you should sign up for the Business Manager. It's separate from just being like on the admin side. Totally free. It allows you to see even more data, and then if you're going to run ads, you can also run them out of the Business Manager. So definitely worth doing. Hootsuite there's a free tier. You can monitor all of your social media from there. They have a dashboard that you can customize relatively easily, so you can see all of your mentions.
You can get all of it, leave it on your dashboard and stare at it. People are talking about you.
Yeah, you can spend a whole day doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Mention is something that it's kind of replace Google Alerts. So Mention, they also have, I think it's a free set of mentions, like every month, and then it refills. You get like 20 or 25. And anytime that the keyword that you put in, whether that's you, a doctor, a competitor, is mentioned online somewhere, they shoot you an email. The IFTT is if this, then that. And you can create custom recipes. They're really easy to do. It sounds kind of confusing, but basically it's just clicking a few buttons and you can say, so every time someone direct messages me on Twitter, send me an email. So if I get this, then do this. Or every time I get a new contact request, put it in a Google spreadsheet.
So every time I get a new appointment
That
request,
one's free.
tell me, or tell this person they can but they don't have to wait.
Yeah. Next one is customer interaction tools. These you got to pay for. They have free trials, but essentially they let you communicate with customers across all the social channels, and they support needs as they arise. They both have really good customer service teams on them to help you provide better customer service for patients. In the reputation management stuff, Empathy is a monitoring service. It's actually the one that we use for our clients. And every time that there is a new review, you get alerted to that within 24 to 48 hours. It'll tell you where it is, what they said, and then a direct link to it. That works for doctors and PAs. Review Trackers does something very similar, just a different flavor. Solution Reach and Demand Force actually will tie into many of the EMR systems that are out there. They do the same thing, so you can get some sort of reputation monitoring with them as well. I know Solution Reach also allows you to create custom emails, so you can reach out to like patient birthdays. You can set those up, and it'll send out an email. There's newsletters, templates in there. There's a lot of really cool stuff, but those are obviously all paid tools. True or false?
True.
She said it. Who said it? Who said
I
it?
think Cecilia.
Okay, so do you want this, or am I going to give it to someone else? I'll give it to you, and you pass it to whoever you like, if you don't want to use it. It's a training, so if you want to have a training for your employees on any of the topics we talked about, or anything that we have in our wheelhouse, we will gladly come out to your practice and train your employees and give them, a basic over lunch and morning, and whatever you want, and teach them how what they're doing is impacting the bottom line.
All right. So
This is the crazy stuff.
nobody here is probably really concerned with, nor should you be, about bots. Have you heard about them on the news or anything? So it's essentially, it's AI, artificial intelligence. You can set up very easily now bots that will handle your customer service.
And this is happening in the mainstream world, not healthcare.
Yeah, so
And it's been happening.
it's nothing to worry about right now.
But it's coming
But it is
to
coming.
us.
And essentially, so Pandora bots that's listed there, basically it's a web service for building and deploying these chatbots. So what will happen is you sign up for the account, you can say, when someone asks this question, give them this response. If they ask this question, here's response 2. If that doesn't work, send it to whomever on your team. So it's a way to have a 24/7 chat service. You can do it right through your website. It's relatively affordable to set that up. Facebook Messenger is one. They've created their own sort of, it's called API for these bots, and you can, again, build things into them so you can have people message your practice through Facebook Messenger, and then it will respond to them as needed. Domino's famously did this, I think it's like 6 months ago, and you can order a pizza, it's all bot driven, and then they just drop the order at the closest Domino's, and then it's out for delivery. So
And
no
you've
human
used
interaction
this
at all.
before, because if you're on Amazon buying something, that's like predictive selling, and that's tied into a bot, which I know everybody here is on Amazon buying. Or if you go to 1-800-Flowers, they'll try to upsell you on certain things.
They give me a-
That's a bot.
Yeah. One thing that we've seen tremendous success with, we've been doing it for a couple of years now, is FAQ videos on YouTube. So I just did one of these actually with an oncologist, and he said that one of the most common questions that he is asked, patients come in, they say, are you going to do a biopsy today? And the answer most of the time on that first appointment is no. So he created this video that he then has patients watch before they come in an effort to speed up his clinic so he doesn't have to answer the same question over and over. Zendesk is another tool for customer service. You can build that out and customize it as needed to improve customer relationships. And then the last bullet there is in-office efforts. So that's some of the training that we talked about. That's signage, incentives for employees, rewards, and again, highlighting positives and making sure that everyone on the same page, kumbaya. See if this will play. Everybody remembers this, right?
Yeah.
Right, do nothing unless social media dictates it. This was that United passenger getting dragged off the plane, and then obviously that went viral. News coverage.
2,290 shares.
Yeah. All right.
It's a lesson on what not to do.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a lot of information. and, you know, you're not gonna take a bot back to your practice.
Not yet.
Not yet, it's coming, and, you know, you might be just overwhelmed with the whole thing, so if there's only one or two things that you can do, what would they be, Corey?
So, I think it's important to set a goal to respond to every patient interaction online. That's something that everybody can do. If you're not monitoring those things now, use one of those tools I talked about. You can either pay for one, or you can mention. And then just say that the response, or that the query has been heard, positive or negative. Say thank you for sharing, or you know, we'll do what we can to make this right.
Or per our conversation.
Yeah, exactly. If you've already reached out to them, we understand that you've spoken to the director of operations and this issue has been resolved. Thank you for sharing, whatever the case may be. Do a customer service training for employees, even if it's something that you create and it's only 15 minutes over lunch one day, have it catered, and just go through 3 or 4 big points that you want to drive home. Let's do and number 3, tell employees when they're doing a good job. So share it with them, because all they hear most of the time is complaints. Make sure that you're sharing the positive with them, because they need to hear that too.
All right, so I can get through this without hacking up a lung. We have an ebook that we wrote called 10 Tips to Creating Rock Star Employees. It's not that long. You can read it during your morning coffee. If you want it, all you have to do is text this number. You're going to get a text back immediately. You're going to put in your email. We're going to send it to you right now. It talks about things that we did not talk about today, but you're going to be like, it's so simple.
Text the word insight to that.
Oh, yes.
So that's what.
Well, I think, leave it up, Corey.
Oh, just kidding. Thank you.
So, that's it. We will gladly stay as long as you want us to stay, answer any questions. I hope that you got into 1 or 2 things, but remember, if you can't do all of this, just focus on 3 simple things. Like, set a small goal. It doesn't even have to be operational yet, but something that you can do to take advantage of every one of those interactions online. Because that's where your customers are, that's where your potential patients are, that's where your competition is, and you need to craft that message and not let that message be crafted around your practice. So with that, thank you so much again for letting us be here. We appreciate it.